WeDeyCode. This is episode 3, and we'll be looking into HTML fundamentals. So, what we're going to learn is what an HTML document looks like, what HTML elements are, what's a nested HTML element, what are some HTML attributes, and what are the various headings, paragraphs, and styles. So we have quite a lot to cover in this video. So let's dive right in. But before that, make sure to subscribe to our channel here, and also check out our Twitter. It's at WeDeyCode on Twitter, and make sure to check our playlist here, because every new video related to front-end development is being updated in this playlist. Okay, so let's start with HTML, what an HTML document looks like. So a simple HTML document, first of all, we have to create one. So in here, I'm going to just create one called simple.html. Okay, so the extension is .html, and what I'm going to do is say I'm going to create a doc type. So remember, we're using VS Code, so it's allowing us to quickly, as you saw here, when I started writing doc type, it's already picked up on what I was doing, and it's how this is think of this as autocomplete for coding, to make coding faster. So as we know, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. So there are different kinds of markup languages, and what this declaration does, what doc type does, is that it tells the parser. Now this is an HTML5 document. So after this, we type in HTML. So you need to type that in twice. So if you notice, there's a difference between what's up here and what's down here. What is up here is the opening of the element, and this is the close. So here we close an element with a backslash. So we're going to get into elements very shortly, but basically everything in HTML is an element. So a markup language is really just allowing us to describe some information, right? So in this case, HTML allows us to describe what a web page looks like, and it does that by creating elements that have certain attributes, which we'll get into. So now what you see is that you have this opening and you have a close. So let me zoom into that a little bit more. So there's an opening and a close. So let me just do that again. I type this, I open HTML, and now when I close it, I hope VS Code doesn't do it automatically for me. Yeah, I want to do it myself. Okay, so when oh yeah, so it does it. Okay, so what happens is when I close it, if I want to close it, I just enter some new lines. I open this, put a forward slash. Yeah, and VS Code does it for me. But anyways, yeah, so you can see that's the main difference. That's how we close it. So you might be wondering, how do we then close this? Well, there are some exceptions. Something like this is it's fine without a closing tag. In some other cases, you would have the closing tag. So for something like an image, sometimes you might see people put a closing tag like this. This can happen. So these are two ways to do it, but it doesn't work for every single element. This works if first of all, this element supports it, and if all the attributes for this element can simply go in between this tag. So with images have to come from somewhere. So you're going to have to put them in this. So it could be google.com/image1. Just random example, right? So in this case, I don't actually have to put anything inside. But anyways, we're stepping ahead of ourselves. So now we have we've specified what the type of the document is, and now we've said, okay, we're opening up the HTML itself. So we're going to create a head element. Okay, so now inside the head element, so first of all, the HTML is the root element. So think of it that everything starts from somewhere. Think of it as so you know how on a tree, right, when you look at a tree, the roots is at the bottom and everything branches out. Now in computer science and software engineering, what we do is to turn the tree upside down. So the roots is actually at the head and the branches go downwards. Okay, so what we started doing is essentially, right, we've started something like this: HTML, and we started creating branches, right? So we have one child here called head, right? So HTML is acting as our root, right? Head is one of the child nodes, so that's what they're called. So it's a node, child node. The root itself is a node, but it's the main node, right? Is the very first node, rather. And in this case, HTML is also the parent node. It's the parent of head. Now inside of head, if I go and say, okay, title, right, and I say learning HTML, okay, now you can see what's the difference between this, right? In this case, I didn't go ahead and do this. In certain scenarios, when I know it's just when I know that all I'm typing is just a bit of information, it's okay to just put it on one line. So now you see this also has its own child. Okay, so now, right, title is a grandchild in quotes of HTML. Okay, so the title element contains extra information about the so the head element, that's where we keep extra information. We call this information metadata, right? Data about data. HTML itself is data, is information. Is information that describes what a page looks like. So in the head, that's where we add meta information about the HTML page. So an example of meta information is the title of your page, right? That's one way to describe what is on your page. And this title element, right, is what you'd usually see in the browser's title bar. So like here on YouTube, you can see Frontend Pro Season 1. So let's remove all this. Let's see what happens when we save this document and open it up. So I'm just going to open that in here. Okay, so as you can see up here, it says learning HTML. Right, that's the title of this document. Also, if you notice in my URL, it's not pointing to like in this case, it's pointing to youtube.com, but because the HTML file is on my laptop, this is on my laptop, when I double clicked it, it's opened up in my browser, and inside of my browser, the file, the URL is just the file path. So what's a URL? URL is just a uniform resource locator, right? It tells you the location of a web page or some resource, right? This resource here happens to be an HTML document that lives somewhere on my laptop. This my YouTube playlist is a resource that lives on YouTube. So Google Chrome goes to youtube.com, looks for a specific playlist with this ID. Okay, so let's proceed. Now there's something called a body. Okay, So actually, let me see if I can bring that diagram back. Okay, yes. So now we have a body element. Okay, so I'm sure you can guess what that is. This is where the actual information, everything about your page, goes into the body. So these are the two main children nodes. Okay, so who owns this? This is a sibling of head. Right. So this is child node. So head is a child node of HTML, right? Body is also a child node of HTML, and it is a sibling of head. So there's no direct relationship between body and title, right? So this is creating some kind of tree, right? This is the root, and these are the children under it. Another way to visualize this is this way. The more common way to visualize this is like this: HTML followed by so we'll have this. Okay, this is the more common way. This is what you actually see in textbooks. So that's the head and that's the body. Okay, and now here, one thing under head is what? Title. So this is what we call the DOM, the document object model, if I remember correctly, right? You can see this is creating a hierarchy. So HTML is the root node, right? Its children are head and body. One possible child of head is called title. So each of these elements acts as node in the tree. Okay, so some of this foundational knowledge is important for the future when more complex topics are covered, like data structures and algorithms. So trees and all that are something that are not covered in this course, but or in this series. But this is what I'm just introducing it to at least let you have that be at the back of your mind. So let's see what happens. Okay, so now let's see what happens with this document as it is. You can see that VS Code isn't properly highlighting this, right? It looks different from what's up here. So as you may have guessed, this is not valid HTML syntax. In programming languages, we have something called syntax. Okay, so think of syntax in a way like grammar or the alphabet, right, of a specific spoken language. In a spoken language, right, if I'm writing in English, I would be using English characters, and I'll be constructing words with English words. I'll be constructing sentences with English words, right? The same way in programming languages or markup languages, if you're saying that you're using a specific markup language, in our case, HTML, anything else in the document that is not supported by that markup language, it will be seen as invalid data. So let's see what happens when we try to load refresh our page here. Okay, so for some reason it's still loading up, which is strange. So now this is because first of all, with HTML5 and also advancements made in the browser, sometimes you can just write any kind of garbage in here. In fact, if I were to delete all this, let's see what happens if I just put 1. Right, it shows up on the browser, right? But ideally, or at least in the past with previous browsers, you can't just write anything. And of course, what you see here is that the structure that I have here is not preserved. Instead, everything just shows up in one line. So it's not enough to just write things this way. You also have to maintain the hierarchy. So in order to maintain that hierarchy, in order to have the proper structure, you must use the proper HTML elements. So here, we will create something called H1. The H1 element is a heading. So there are basically 6 headings. You can go from H1 all the way to H6, right? And each time it gets smaller. So H1 is the largest. Okay. So if we say heading 1, okay, and here we say heading 6. Just to try things out, so we'll put H3 in the middle, just so we can see the difference. So I'm going to delete this because this is invalid. And now I'm going to refresh. Okay, can you see the difference? So we still see Learning HTML as our title, and now you see different headings. Okay, so let me put this, because I zoomed in. This is the actual, this is it to scale, but I zoomed in just because of my screen. Okay, so heading 1 is the largest, followed by 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so let's remove these 2. So those are headings, right? Apart from headings, we have the paragraph. So the paragraph element is what you would use more often than not. That's or when it comes to text, right? You use a lot of things frequently, but paragraphs are also commonly used, widely used. So we can just say something like this is a paragraph, or this was written inside a paragraph element. Okay, now this is what our HTML document looks like. So if I reload the page, what do you see? This was written inside a paragraph element. That's exactly this. Thank you for watching this video. This episode, we've covered quite a lot, and we'll be covering even more in future videos. So please make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and comment down below with any questions you have in the comment section, or any comments on the video in general. And remember to follow us at WeDeyCode on Twitter. See you next time.